Hi, I'm Miss Daring, and today we're going to walk you through another cycle. If you remember from the previous lesson that we were talking about cycles that are called biogeochemical cycles. And this is where elements are passed from one organism to another and among the different parts of the biosphere through various loops. And so we talked about the water cycle and how that recycles. We also spent quite a bit of time with the carbon cycle and learned about the individual loops and processes that allowed that nutrient to go throughout the ecosystem. And so our big idea was that nutrients or atoms need to be recycled. And so we're going to also take a look at another cycle that does the same process to deliver more nutrients to the living organisms. The cycle that we're going to look at today is called the nitrogen cycle, and we're going to use a case study that deals with a fish tank. And so your goal is to try and figure out what happened in the fish tank to the nitrogen cycle as we look at some data. So I'm going to disappear here to give us a little bit more area on the screen. And so this is the data that was collected from early August until mid-September. And we want you to stop the video and make a prediction of what happened in the fish tank based upon this visual data. So in the first column, there's the number of fish. The second column, they recorded the number of live plants that were in the aquarium. Third thing was the temperature. They measured it in centigrade because it is science units. The pH was also taken for the middle column. And then they recorded these three different amounts of molecules that contain nitrogen. And so the first one is ammonia, which is NH3. The middle one is nitrite, which is NO2. And the third one, or the last column, represents nitrate, which is nitrogen with 3 oxygens. So what do you think happened in the fish tank based upon patterns and observations or inferences that you see in this data table? For those of you that are at home, it might be hard to see all those little tiny numbers, so we also made some visual graphs for you. So this is looking at the live species that are in our fish tank. And the blue line on the top is representing the number of fish over the same time period as early August to mid-September. And they also recorded on the red line for the same dates the number of aquarium plants that were living. Temperature and pH were also recorded. We could have put all of these lines on the same graph, but as you can see, there was quite a few columns there, so we just kind of split them up so that they would be easier to find trends or patterns. On the x-axis, we still have our same dates of August 1st through mid-September, and this is the recorded temperature in the tank, which is in centigrade, and this is also our Celsius. And this is also the pH value in the dark blue line with the dot dashes over the same time period. And then last, we put these same ammonia molecules, nitrite molecules, and nitrate molecules on a line graph because they all represent the molecules that contain nitrogen. And the time period again is early August through mid-September. And all three molecules then are labeled. So the green one is the ammonia, the purple one is your nitrite, and the aqua blue one is your nitrate. So make a prediction of what you think is happening in your fish tank. For the second part of our case study, we're going to actually deal with the parts of the nitrogen cycle that contain nitrogen. And so we have our 4 molecules present. We're introducing a fourth one called the atmospheric nitrogen, which is pure nitrogen in the form of N2 bonded, so 2 nitrogens bonded together. So we're going to use these definitions on the left to determine the correct placement of the items in the diagram below. And you can pause the video and select which boxes should fit in. And so nitrate, we're going to do this molecule first. And nitrate is absorbed by plants from the soil. So which arrow do you think would best represent nitrate? Because of the word absorb, we're looking for an arrow that goes into the plants. So the best one would be right here, as this main arrow comes into the plants. Second one, ammonia is converted from waste products or dead organic matter by the decomposers within the cycle. So which box would fit decomposers? And the only one coming out of decomposers would be the bottom one on the left. Third one is pretty easy, atmospheric nitrogen. Again, it constitutes about 78% of the gases that would be found in the atmosphere. So we're going to label the top box as atmospheric nitrogen. And that leaves the last one to be an intermediate molecule in the cycle, and the only box that we have left. It means it's an intermediate or a conversion between ammonia to nitrate. And so this is what our nitrogen cycle would look like. So you're going to redraw that nitrogen cycle. So we relisted the words here for you in the definitions into a fish aquarium ecosystem. Don't forget to use various loops. It's not one big cycle, but instead it has different components, and then also use arrows to show which way those molecules would be converted or flow. So your drawing probably looks something like this. Atmospheric nitrogen was on the top. That was pretty easy. Remember, ammonia is coming from the waste products. So if our fish dies or our fish excretes waste, that will be converted into ammonia or released as ammonia. The other one that we have is nitrate. And remember, that one has to be absorbed by plants. And so most of you are probably going to put an arrow towards plants from the nitrate. And then the intermediate molecule would have to go in between, which is from ammonia to nitrate. You would need nitrite somewhere. And because it cycles, we also have to have some return arrows. So we're going to find out more about why we can draw an arrow from here up to the atmospheric nitrogen, and why we can draw one from the atmospheric nitrogen coming down to ammonia. So knowing how they recycle, do you need to revise your prediction of what you think happened to the fish in the tank? And a reason why that happened to your fish. We're going to add another little piece of information to this, and we are going to watch what is actually happening to the molecules of nitrogen in our tank. And so we are going to use a video link that is about 3 minutes in length to watch what happens between the ammonia, the nitrite, and the nitrate. So click on the video link and give it a watch. From the video, we probably simplified why our arrows go the way they do. And the idea is that atmospheric nitrogen is converted to ammonia, and ammonia gets changed into or fixed into a molecule called nitrite with 2 oxygens. And then we also add another oxygen in the process for nitrate. And nitrate can be absorbed by the plants. And nitrate can also be denitrification or denitrified to go back into the atmosphere. And so that kind of completes our cycle. How is this possible? The answer is the little bacteria that were involved in the process. And so we see the nitrosomonas, where it's going to convert our ammonia into the nitrite. They talked about the toxicity of the nitrite. And so then there's other bacteria that are super beneficial in an ecosystem where they want to take the Nitrobacter bacteria and convert the nitrite into nitrate. And that same nitrobacteria also has the capability then of denitrification and bringing it back into the atmosphere. So to end up our little activity, you are going to predict what happened to all of the molecules and the living organisms in the fish tank by doing what we call a claim evidence reasoning. And so we'll come back to all these graphs together. And what you're going to do is you are going to make a claim of what caused the fish in the tank ecosystem to become unstable. And so what happened in that fishbowl that made that ecosystem not sustain the lives of our fish? And so a claim is a one-sentence answer to the question that we were investigating. And it should kind of be a summary of what you can conclude about this activity. Second is you're going to label some evidence. That would be what scientific data can be used to support the claim. And so you might talk about some of the molecules, or you might talk about some of the ways that it gets converted, or the reasons why it gets converted from the video clip or from the data. And then the last one is our reasoning. And so that's putting together kind of a justification for why this evidence is important to the claim. So your evidence should support and back up your true statement of what you learned. And this might be where you also include some scientific principles to put those two pieces together. So there's a Google form that you are going to complete and submit for your credit today, and figure out how the nitrogen cycle then is impacted and why our fish were not able to live in this environment for a long period of time, and why the environment became unstable. So have fun with it. We love to read your answers.